Well, I'd like to introduce David Carr to everyone. David, I think we had you on the calendar before the pandemic started, if I'm remembering correctly, and then the pandemic started.
Yeah.
We pushed you back a little bit, and now here we are 13 months later or so. So it's my pleasure to welcome David Carr to today's meeting, and if everyone could join me in welcoming him warmly, virtually. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to try and share my screen if I can.
All right, I'll make you host. Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
All right, you should be good to go.
Let's see if we can do this right now. That would be useful, wouldn't it?
Nice.
And people see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll just jump in. I've only, I tried to, I talked to Mitch and, keep this to a short presentation because I've done a lot of these that, that go on for 45 minutes and you guys probably don't want to hear me babble that long. But I'm with the Finger Lakes Institute at Hobart William Smith Colleges. I'm going to talk to you today about invasive species and then in particular, one called Starry Stonewort that we've built a collaborative around to try and help control. So Finger Lake Institute is in Geneva, Hobart William Smith, as I said. We promote environmental research and education on around the Finger Lakes and surrounding environments and so on. We run on several different program areas, everything from education outreach and so on as listed there. Hosted at the Finger Lakes Institute is the Finger Lakes Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, which is a big mouthful, but PRISM is the acronym. There are 8 PRISMs across New York State. We cut New York State into 8 different PRISMs. And all of us do partnerships with a wide variety of organizations and lake associations and so on. And the whole goal is to get control on invasive species. We looked at the spread, the impacts of them. We hold education, things like coordinating, go to fairs, you name it, do whatever we can to work with people to control invasive species. So what are invasive species? Briefly, they're nasty usually. They come in from elsewhere, and so meaning they're not native. And when they come in from somewhere else, they don't have natural enemies. They can reproduce like crazy. They can adapt to whatever environments. They can survive in harsh conditions. This long phrase here, affect biodiversity and ecosystems and threaten native species through outcompeting them. Basically, they come in and they push everything else out, is the quick way to say it. They'll take right over, just push out whatever the native species that normally are there through competition and just really aggressive growth. They're both aquatic and terrestrial. I'm going to talk mostly about aquatic, but there's plenty of land-based invasives around. They can have economic, environmental, and human health impacts. So invasives are a problem. And hopefully, we won't get to this point where they'll evolve into something horrendous. But we do have milfoil and zebra mussels in Owasco Lake and many other places. This is the most technical thing I'm going to show you, and it may be the most important to understand invasive species. This is the invasion curve. Across the bottom is time. Up the left side is the infestation or the area that's being infested by invasive, and also on the right side is going up as well as control costs. Down, I don't know if you can see my pointer, down here in the lower left, prevention. This is where we want to be always. Okay, we want to prevent stuff from coming in the first place. The reason being, as we travel further up here, it gets more and more difficult to control, if at all, and very expensive. Eradication is the next level where we're still able to get rid of stuff if it comes in, if we found it early enough, and then we move into containment. That means we really can't eradicate it anymore, but maybe we can contain it to a certain area. Unfortunately, this is where public awareness usually begins. We want to have public awareness start way back here at prevention. We don't want it in the water body at all to start with. Then we get up here in this big nasty red area. At this point, generally, it's whatever the invasive is taking over a big area. It's hard to control or impossible to control. And now we're just talking about some kind of management if possible. and protecting what native resources are left. These two quotes on the bottom, early detection and rapid response, we use that all the time. And what that means is we can find it early enough, hopefully a rapid response can be engaged, and that's down here. And it's down here, prevention and eradication. Maybe we get in and take care of it, whatever the invasive is. And then clean, drain, dry has to do with the aquatics, and that's a drum we beat all the time, and we have a pretty wide watercraft steward program going now across the Great Finger Lakes region. And these kids are out there, I say kids because mostly college students, and they talk about people about their boats. So clean the boat off, get every scrap of vegetation off you can, drain all the water out of it. And if you can, let it dry in the sun before you go to the next water body. And that way, or even to the next end of the same big lake we have out here, so you're not transporting invasives. So with that, we are talking today about Starry Stonewort. It's a funny name. These pictures on the left, that's what it looks like in one single piece. It's long, kind of stocky looking plant. It can get quite as long as 6 or 8 feet. Generally, it's about this size. You see the nickel in the picture. The little bulbils, it's called, in the middle of the star, that's where it gets its name. Those are actually little reproductive structures. They're not seeds. This is an aquatic macroalgae, which is something a lot of people haven't heard of. I'm not going to go into details about it, but it looks like a plant, but it's technically an algae. It brings nutrients in through the cell walls, the sides of the stalks, and the branchlets, and so on. These little bulbils, so-called, are very small. These are my dirty fingernails here. They're usually down in the sediment. They're quite small, but that's where it gets its name. This stuff came from Europe and Asia, found in the 1970s, probably from the bilge of giant tankers that came through in the St. Lawrence River. As many aquatic invasives in the Northeast come through, they get here from those things. They dump their bilge water, and there's little fragments of these things, and that's all it takes to get them to grow.
David,
yes.
This particular species, this is really rapidly growing in Cayuga Lake.
Yes, it is. It's growing rapidly in a lot of places. Yes.
Yeah, especially out in front of Wells College.
Yep, very good. I didn't pay Mac to say that, but he's dead on. It's perfect. Yeah, exactly.
I'm a scuba diver, and
I know that. Yes.
And I do their water lines for them.
Good.
And I can tell you that 5 years ago, where the water line that I do 5 years ago, there was none of this was in eyesight to the water line.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, I had to have them blow air through the line so I could find it.
Yeah, it grows remarkably fast. It's a real problem. These pictures here are in the Cayuga Lake outlet down in Penn Yan. Those are these globs here. I pulled these up myself, this one down here, and I can tell you those are 95 to 100% Starry Stonewort. It's just solid down there, and this is a big bed here. These were, they use a harvester down there every year. These pictures are a little fuzzy, but that's 100% Starry as well. These pictures are from some partners up in Canada. Same thing. These are beautiful little lakes. They're just choked out with this stuff. Starry is so bad that it pushes fish out too. Fish cannot spawn in this. They can't hide in it or spawn in it. There's some people say Eurasian milfoil, which is an Olasco lake, is okay in some small doses because fish can hide in it. But this Starry, fish can't even hide in it. It's bad stuff. So is it in Olasco Lake? It sure is. These locations here, I've got a satellite view here with dots, and here's a zoom in at the north and south ends. It's been found in all these locations in the outlet on the east shore here and down the south end by the marina and so on. Each of these points represents a rake toss. And what a rake toss is, it's a method of sampling that's used by citizen scientists and researchers. But you literally take 2 landscape rakes and cut the handles off real short, zip tie them together so you get the tines facing out, and put a long rope on them. You throw it out, let it sink, and drag it in and see what you get. So each one of these points represents a rake toss. And I guarantee if they're this tight down here, then probably this whole area is largely infested with Starry. So it's a problem, and I'll bet anybody's lunch that there's much more of it in the lake than we've seen here. We just don't have enough manpower yet to, do right tosses everywhere to find out where it is. And I'm putting a different hat on. I also work very closely with the Wasco Watershed Lake Association folks. I'd be remiss to not say, if you're not a member, please consider being a member of Wasco Watershed Lake Association. It's a great group. They do amazing work. Everybody that lives or works in Auburn is drinking and using the water from this lake and some of the surrounding towns. So please consider joining. It's a real short, easy to remember website, owlet.org, and you can join right there or call this number if you want, and we will get you a membership form if you don't want to do it online. That's my advertisement. I'll go on. So what are we doing about this? Well, Finger Lakes Institute, the Starry Stonewort Collaborative was formed a couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago. We are funded by the Environmental Protection Agency, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. Another big mouthful, but we're thankful to those people. They've funded a lot of programs across the Great Lakes region. This is a Great Lakes Basin program. This is a big deal for the Finger Lakes Institute. We spread our wings well beyond the Finger Lakes region in New York State for this project. This is our kind of our tagline, our motto, or whatever, our reason for existing. We want to enhance everybody's ability, be them research and experts down to citizens, to address Starry Stonewort on 3 different levels. We're talking about providing and providing, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but giving out information and knowledge about the ecology of Starry Stonewort. We do large outreach efforts, get people involved, and then we're looking at control techniques. I want to mention this one carefully. BMP stands for Best Management Practices. Currently, there are no best management practices for Starry Stonewort, and there is no known way to fully eradicate it once it's established. Some things, if you've got the money and the will and the permitting, like Eurasian milfoil, you can hit it with herbicides and take it out completely. You can kill it. There's other hydrillas, the same, or other invasives. Nobody's come up with anything yet, an algicide in this case, that will take it down completely. There's some work on manual removal, very careful manual removal in small areas. They're showing some promise, but that can be really tricky because if you let little fragments go away, they float off and start new beds. So it's gonna be very careful. So currently, there's no known way to completely eradicate it, particularly in a big area.
David,
Yes.
what about the use of the matting, like they've done over in Skinny Atlas Lake?
They are investigating that. Yes, thanks for bringing that up. Benthic Mating is being tested and researched. There is some promise there. I did hear of one guy researching in Indiana, though, that they put it down and left it down too long. Normal sedimentation came in on top of the matting, and Starry Stonewort started growing on top of the mat. So you got to be careful how you're doing that. There is some promise in matting, but there's a lot of research going on. And then I will say that there's a tremendous amount of research going on about control at this point. I'm hopeful we'll find a way to control this stuff for real soon, but just hasn't happened yet. This is the map of my world, keeps me up. This is the Great Lakes Basin. It's a huge area. Every one of those dots is a location for Starry Stonewort. And at this scale, if you were to zoom down in, you'd find many more locations. There's lots of washed out at this scale. So it's a problem across the Northeast. Michigan has really got their hands full here in the middle. We have plenty too, just to get our bearings. This is the Finger Lakes Institute. We're just east of that. There's Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse over here, and so on. So this is where we're at. It's a cool project because I talk to people in Canada, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan on a regular basis. So it's a fun project, although it's a challenge. What are we doing with a thing? In my mind, a collaborative means sharing information and talking to each other. So we have a real good website up we're very proud of, starrystonewort.org. Who knew that name wasn't taken, right? So we got that. We built, through our web designer, built a library, kind of a new thing that we have 41 documents and presentations and things from professional level that are available for anybody to look at and download. If you want to know more about Starry Stonewort, the library is right there. Of course, digital outreach. We have social media. We've got a young guy working with me that's gone crazy with this. And we're on all the social medias, the big ones: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Every time we do a webinar, we record it. We do a training, we record it, and it goes up to our own YouTube channel. This YouTube channel has a real nice way to get to it from the website again. It's a lot easier to get into if you want to see some really interesting research. Constant Contact, if you're not familiar, is a group email publishing kind of system that you can send out really nice newsletters and flyers and things. We've got over 400 people across the Great Lakes Basin now subscribed to that, so it's taken right off. The young guy in my office, Mike Caston, did a story map recently. This is like a standalone like an interactive website, and he's got all kinds of information in there about Starry Stonewort, how to identify it, the history of it, the collaborative. You can click on these points on the map, and it brings up a little box that gives you more information about activities around. It's a really useful tool. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from a lot of people on this. So again, and you can get to this through the main website as well. Webinars, I'm not going to describe each of these. These are recent webinar, last year's mostly. We had people from the University of Minnesota, the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, Lake Simcoe up in Canada. This is a huge organization. Lake Simcoe is a really large lake. It looks small next to Great Lakes, but it's a really big lake. Brian Jinsel, limnologist, he's been very supportive of us. He did a great presentation. Young guy doing doctoral work and research in Central Michigan. So we've had some really good webinars. The numbers of parentheses, the number of attendees, which isn't bad for the first year we did this. We're going to do the webinars again starting in May this year. So this has been a great way to expand, to spread information. We've had everybody attending from high-level researchers to just citizens that are concerned, and lots of conversation afterwards. Citizen scientists, this is one of our most important things we do, not only at Finger Lakes Prism, but in this project as well. And the idea is getting folks at the community level trained in how to identify and report invasive species. It's important for involvement. It really gives people a great idea of understanding the importance of conservation, the importance of controlling invasive species and why they're a problem. Data, they collect, our citizen scientists have collected really good data over the years for the most part. And there's a lot of ground to cover because they're talking about lakes, but you get the idea. They go out and there's got a gentleman with a rake, and told you about this rake tossing. That's how we do it. You throw the rake out on the rope and you bring it in and see what you've got. And we teach them how to identify Starry Stonewort and a couple other invasive species. If they want to learn to do more, they're more than welcome to do more rake tosses, and we suggest they can identify as much as they want. We supply all kinds of ID guides and resources for them to do that kind of thing. Again, early detection. If they can find something that nobody's found before, maybe somebody can go out and try and control a little better or something, but it really helps map where all the stuff is, if beds are expanding, if it's new there from previous season and so on. Very important. So how do we do this? We provide free training and support. We give training materials. We generally can't give those stuff to every single person, but we stretch the budget as far as we can. If the Lake Association's got a whole bunch of people involved, we'll give them a handful of these kits to use. Here's a rake with the rope tied around around the handle. We've got bins to sort what they found, lots of information, pens. We even give, if we've got it, bug spray and things. So we give lots of resources online, fact sheets, ID guides, all this stuff. They can find out what they're doing. Then reporting. Reporting is critical. We used to do paper and pencil. In the field, it gets tricky because stuff gets wet and smeared. This year, we're going to use IMAP Invasives, which is a really great piece of software that's maintained by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the New York Natural Heritage Program. It runs on a smartphone or a tablet. It's really easy. You go in, the training's simple, just incorporate it in our training. You go out, you pull in your rake and see what you've got in the bin and say, okay, I've got this, this, and this. You report it in there and upload it and you're done. But it goes right to the state. We can access it to check on it and confirm things and so on. You take a picture right there with your phone of what you've got so we can confirm things. It's a great system. They do a great job up there. So last year, real quick, in New York State, we have a program. The Finger Lakes Prism has got a program that's going on its 5th year. So when the Starry Stonewort program got involved, we kind of merged New York State because they're both doing the same thing. No matter, it's all the same work. Last year, we did 340 rake tosses. We had 34 citizen scientists, 14 organizations, 34 different water bodies. We have, of course, our large presence in New York State because of the existing program. Got a bunch of really excited people up here in Canada, a few people down here in Indiana. It wasn't a bad start. We did well. They're so excited that people were going to increase the number of people in Canada by at least 60 this year, apparently. Another organization got involved. Already this year in New York State, we've got over 100 people registered. And so we're really excited about that. So we're going to increase our numbers dramatically this year. And more advertising. If you want to get involved, this is a really fun poster we had developed and we've modified it. Anybody can do this. It's not hard. You just need access to the water. You can do it from a shoreline, from a dock, from a boat. I've done it from a kayak. You toss the rake out as described. It's not hard. We ask people to go out every other week through the summer, do between 1 to 3 rake tosses, record it in an app, and you're done. It's that easy, but it's very important information. You can, of course, do more than that. You want to do lots more rake tosses, go crazy. My contact down here, I can help you out. Megan Harris is handling the New York State stuff specifically, but we're working very closely together. I talk to her all the time. It's a great program. We need your help. You know, we get more people in Owasco, we get a better idea where it is there, because I can guarantee Starry and other invasives are all over that lake. We just don't know where they are. So I will stop rambling. Any other questions?
Now, David, something like mosquito larva, they can live 3 years dried up and then they get into water and it reactivates.
Yes.
For these species, if they dry in the sun, is that it or what?
Yeah. Yes. Generally, if you extract all this stuff out, that's the thing. When you do a harvesting, for example, you pull all that stuff out. You want to get it away from the water until it dries out, right? You don't want it just falling back in the water or running in. So yes, these things will dry out, and if you've harvested and dry it out in the sun, it will kill it. But your larva analogy is good. Those little starry bulbils I told you about, they can survive for several years, I believe. I'm not sure exactly in the research, at least 2 years in the sediment. So if you go through a harvester and cut it, or use algicide and knock it down for the season, those little bulbils are still viable down in the sediment. So the stuff will come back. And that's similar for a lot of invasives, unfortunately. Unless you really kill it all, it's going to come back.
And going back to zebra mussels, you just mentioned them briefly. Have we given up the fight on that for the lakes that they're in? Or
give up the fight? Never give up the fight.
No, I mean for the like I used to dive Sodas Bay and they covered the bottom. Is there anything? Is that ever going to change?
Boy, we hope so. There is still research going on to fight the invasive mollusks, because there's the Asian clan, the zebra mussels. There's a Chinese mystery snail in the Northeast now. It's a snail, but so yeah, no, we have not given up the fight. There's still folks doing research on that stuff, trying to find the best way to control those. It's a tough one. There's no question. So no, we haven't given up the fight. I mean, there's people. We have the Lake Association has tried to coordinate with the city, but also you have to coordinate with Mother Nature. And if you get a really cold period in the winter, there's some evidence they do a drawdown. Draw the water down even further than normal. It exposes some of these beds, and it will kill them. Some of them or most of them. Its research is still ongoing if it's really cold, but that's really hard to do. You need to be able to predict a really long, cold, super cold spell so you can draw the water down. So that is a method that's been tried with some effectiveness. Beyond that, I don't know a lot. I'm not into those. We'd have to find another researcher that can do that stuff. Yes.
David, how's the compliance? I'm over in the village of Skaneateles, and I always presumed on Skaneateles they had good compliance, but then I heard otherwise. I think today compliance is difficult. People don't want to comply with a lot of regulations. Got to do your own thing mentality. But how's the compliance on the lakes with some of the regulations that you have to impose to try to contain these things?
Well, our programs with the Watercraft Stewards, we post people at all the boat launches across the region. We don't have regulatory power. So there's no, you bring up interesting, this is a whole another topic, but there's no or few regulatory laws that control invasives in New York State. In other states there are. There's actually, I think it's Wisconsin, that you can get a ticket on the highway if a police officer sees weeds hanging off a boat trailer down the road. I've heard we have some state laws like that, but they're not really enforced. We're kind of weak in that area. As far as compliance by people doing what our watercraft stewards suggest, it's a hard call. Some people, you can clearly see they care and they want to listen and do what they can. Some people get oppositional, they get in the face. Our training, trains these kids to learn how to deal with people that are kind of grumpy and angry and don't want to deal with it. So I don't know. I don't have an answer. We have data where it seems to be, we would do it if it wasn't effective, I guess what I'm trying to say. There is data that maybe the invasives are not spreading as quickly since we put in watercraft stewards. And we're looking at that. And we as a greater we have them, other prisons of watercraft stewards. I guess the Adirondacks has got like 100 people on every place you can educating people.
David, are you doing any collaborations with like scuba clubs or scuba facilities that are in the water all the time?
We haven't. I'd love to talk to you. I'm not sure we can figure out, but you or somebody else would love to talk about that, because the hand removal does show promise, and there's diver assisted suction harvesting, which is a new thing people are very excited about. It's expensive. You need at least 2 divers to do. And I do Cuca Lake again back in Penyan. They're going to be doing some of that this summer, I believe. So there is a potential need. But again, the research is still, how do you do it carefully enough? Can you get down into the sediment when it gets all cloudy? You get those little bulbils out. You probably have to do it multiple seasons. You don't want too many fragments floating around because they'll just start new beds and so on. But yes. And in fact, we are looking at another program in our office of looking at training for scuba. It's training some of people to do scuba that don't have it already. We've already got a couple people on staff, the licensed scuba divers.
David, what are the natural enemies and the origin of this starry stonewort?
Great question. Great and a difficult one to answer. That's one place that I would like to see us move further. I have seen a professional journal article report done in a different language. It was in French or German. In Northern Europe, the stuff is in Northern Europe. They actually protected Northern Europe because it's a rare plant in Northern Europe, which is a weird thing to think of because it just grows like crazy here. So we don't know exactly, other than one thing that the researchers do agree on is in the waters around the Great Lakes Basin and our region in the Northeast, they're very calcium rich. And Starry Stonewort loves calcium. So there may be some of the waters where this is naturally occurring doesn't have a lot of calcium. Maybe that's a limiting factor. But they are actually protecting Starry Stonewort in some areas in Europe and Asia because it cleans the water well. They feel it helps clean up the water. Phosphorus, you may have heard, the Lake Association, some others talk, phosphorus gets, really helps plants grow and things. And we try and keep phosphorus and nutrients out of the water to keep from algae forming and things. There's some evidence, again, research is going on in Canada and others, that maybe Starry Stonewort takes up phosphorus, maybe a phosphorus sink. What does that mean exactly? I don't know. It could keep regular algae down, maybe not. So we're looking at the control factors, I guess what I want to say. There's nothing that I've read anyway that actually eats the stuff. There's a duck species in Europe, I think, that eats it a little bit. I read somewhere, but not enough that, so we're looking at that. It's the researchers in the world. Why is it not growing so much in its native habitat? It's here. And that's a similar problem for any invasive. What's controlling it where it's from originally? It's hard to get your head around.
David also getting into collaboration.
Oh, go ahead, Mac.
I'm sorry. Are you doing anything with the USGS, like Tuniston Laboratories down in Cortland, or they're in that's part of what they do is they're in the water all the time looking at species and so on and so forth?
We are not at that level. We are, I say we, my project specifically, what we do, the data we collect goes to USGS. I don't know if you've ever seen the USGS non-indigenous aquatic species database, NAS. And they have a big, you can get online, it's free, it's really good information. You get on, looks up, so anything we collect, we send to them, for example. So we're involved at that level. We're not working with anybody, it comes down to funding and grants. You write the grant, you do what you can with it under the parameters of the grant. I wouldn't be we'd be interested in doing something like that potentially, but we'd have to find a grant to do that or work with them and partner on it. One thing I will say too is we're starting to let the news out. The collaborative is winding down, unfortunately. Our grant's coming to an end. But I am looking hard, and we are looking at ways to maybe keep a legacy out there, if you will, of a way for people to still get at all the data, the resources we've compiled, keep it up online for a while. Things like YouTube will be there forever, more or less. So we're trying to keep that going, looking for other funding to try and keep us going at some level, because we're really still gaining momentum with the project. More and more people and organizations are excited about what we're doing. So it's hard because we continue to build, but we're running out of money. Grants are finite, so we're looking at more grants and ways to keep it going. Even if we're a reduced level, keep it going. Like I said, keep the resources out there and available.
David, have you done any work with NOAA as they prepare Lake Ontario to become a maritime sanctuary? Because one of the side effects that you mentioned of Starry Stonewort is it reduces visibility in the water. And a lot of what NOAA is planning on doing in Lake Ontario has to do with mapping shipwrecks and preserving the water space for research. So I'm curious if there's been any collaboration on that front.
No, there hasn't that I'm aware of. I would love to get involved in it at some level, because that's big ticket stuff. That's NOAA, that's international waters. There's a lot going on there. Those are real projects, big project grants. No, we're not involved in that at this point. I don't know. Again, we get our funding for this project from the EPA. I'm curious if they're involved. They must be at some level, because it's a Great Lakes Restoration Initiative by the EPA. We're funded. They must be working with them, I would think, because it's hard. I think it's hard in the Great Lakes to do anything in your own silo, because it's like I said, international waters. There's a number of Great Lakes organizations. You're talking about 2 different federal governments, provincial and state governments. It gets complicated, but they're really exciting projects. They're so big. But so unfortunately, no, we're not involved in that. It'd be neat if we were.
And you might have gone over this in the presentation, but what's your biggest concern about Starry Stonewort?
Biggest? Wow. Well, my biggest concern is getting the word out still, and particularly in New York State. Michigan has been studying and researching and controlling Starry Stonewort for a decade or more. We know it's here in New York State. It's certainly on the list of priorities and things, but I feel that there's more awareness that needs to happen for Starry Stonewort in New York State, honestly. There's a lot of us, like, if any of you have been around long enough, we've been fighting Eurasian milfoil for decades in Wasco Lake. We used to have harvesters going in Wasco Lake and others to harvest milfoil. Milfoil has been, front and center for a long time. But I think Starry needs more. We're trying to get more and more people to find it and more research in New York State. That's my own personal observation, I guess. It's getting there, and we're getting more. So that's important. And then my other concern is it's just more of an observation. Everybody's stretched thin. We've got as many people as we can. We get things like harmful algal blooms pop up, right? And that's another thing nobody's ever dealt with before. We've been doing some great work. There's tremendous, best research minds in the country are great at environmental science and forestry and Cornell and those places, trying to figure out what to do about this. And so when something pops up like that has a direct potential human harm, it's going to move you away from something that doesn't, right? I mean, as much as it. So there's a concern there. We just need more people. We need more money. We need people involved. Citizen scientists, researchers, just to try and cover all these bases because stuff keeps coming up and we got to deal with it. And, I'm not going to start a big argument here or anything, but, the cyanobacteria, the harmful algal bloom is likely climate change because it's happening all over the world all at the same time. So that's just, again, my observation. Mike. Yeah.
David, if the Starry Stonewort goes unchecked, like if your grants dry up and there's nothing more done and it just goes nuts in these lakes, what's that going to look like? Is it going to kill off the bass first and then trout and like?
Boy, you're asking some really hard questions, Mike. That's a really excellent question. In some regard, and then you can ask the same question for any invasive, basically. How far will it go before it reaches some equilibrium in its environment, stop or not? We just don't know. Targeting what's, fisheries, for example, like you just said, are we going to kill off the bass first or something? Can't answer the question. And we're trying to find out what will happen. Two interesting stories quickly. Brian Ginn up at Lake Simcoe, their history up there in Canada, they eradicated Eurasian milfoil. They wiped it out completely. It took it right out with herbicides. Yay, it's a win. And within 4 years, it all grew back again, only as Starry Stonewort. The Starry Stonewort likes barren, disturbed areas because they went on top of that and it took over, just filled right in. So it can fill in fast, right? So that's a horror story. They're dealing with it. A researcher I know, she did a presentation for us on my list of webinars, Michelle Malt in Wisconsin. They're looking at several different lakes, trying different control measures, trying algicides and harvesting and a bunch of other things. And they left one lake alone, right? This one small lake. And Starry Stonewort grew to a point, stopped, and is actually reducing. The size of the beds are shrinking slowly over time. They have no idea why. They don't know why. They kill themselves to control some lakes, and this one lake is just like, okay, it's starting to die back slowly by itself. So I don't have an answer for you. They're working on it. I mean, these top line researchers are looking at this because we need to know.
I know one place where it's going to continue to have a devastating impact is when you consider the amount of private and municipalities who draw their water from the lakes.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to continue to get more and more difficult because some of these places Wells College is an example. Their water line is 900 feet out where they draw from, and they're still only in 24 feet of water. And
right.
So as this continues to grow, it's going to continue to impact, as the zebra mussels did, where we wound up having to come up with zebra mussel filters. And now you're going to have to come up with some kind of a mechanism to either change the location or proximity of water lines, which are not going to be inexpensive.
No, you're right, absolutely right. And that, you remember that inundation curve I showed, right? Now you're talking about if it's fully infested there, the other way to do it is to, and I don't know what this is, but you annually, every season, you go in and clean out around, the intake. I don't know what that is, 1,000 feet from the intake, whatever. And that would involve either harvesting or algicides or something. Putting algicides right in front of a water intake, boy, I'm not sure that's a good thing to do, but you could harvest it every year. I mean, but that would be an expense. It would be an annual expense at that point. But if there's water intake,
any chemical abatement, the DEC, any chemical abatement has to be done when the pumps are not running.
Yeah.
So,
right.
And it can't be internal to the line. So the abatement has to be external, and you can't have pumps running. But it also depends on what the chemical base is.
Yeah, and algicides, I think they're copper based. I think most of them. Yeah. I'm outside my bailiwick, but yeah, it's a problem. You have to build that in if you start plugging up the lines. Or not allowing enough water. See, there's another question. I don't know how much water flows through a thick bed of Starry. I couldn't tell you. But if it's obviously interfering with how much water they need, then you'd have to cut it down every year. You have to harvest it.
Hey, Mac, what's the difference between protecting the water intake from normal seaweed versus a starry stonewort? What's the difference?
Well, the difference is typically most of these, as an example, I'll use Wells College as an example. As an example, they have a cone that's about 20, maybe 20 inches high. It's about 12 inches at the base. It fits on an 8-inch main with a collar, and it, it weighs about 35 pounds. All right, so until this species started coming in closer to the intake, that intake only sits about 4 inches off the bottom. So it's now at this intake, it is now 3.5 feet deep. And I mean, I have video that I'd be happy to share. Not, I won't do it now, but I have a video of my last dive that I did to clean this intake, and I literally removed the intake and take it back up, and they steam clean it, and then I go back down and clean out all around that area. I used to do it every other year.
So the starry stonewort grows taller than the other seaweed, and then
it'll
goes in.
continue. It's a plant. It's looking for light. It's going to continue to grow. I mean, until the height of it outweighs its ability to grow against it. That's what's going to stop it. It started, like I said, I mean, 5 years ago. If you looked at a brown carpet on the ground, that's what I was within my vision from around that cone. That's all I saw was brown silt. And last year and the year before, they had to get a generator to be able to blow air through an 8-inch main. So the bubbles came out because I couldn't find it. And I find stuff pretty easily. I've been doing this a long time.
The other thing to remember, if you get a really nice, natural, healthy ecosystem, you're going to have a wide variety of plants. You're going to have fish spawning, all this stuff. So there's going to be spaces and gaps, and it's just going to be, the way what you want. But with any invasive, almost, I shouldn't say any, but just about any invasive, starry or whatever, grow in such thick beds of this stuff. It's a whole different, it ruins the ecosystem. So it's this thick wall of vegetation. So it's a whole different thing. So that alone is, a whole different thing that poor Mac has to deal with, for example. So I guess what I'm saying is if you just had no invasives at all, you're going to have less problem, as Mac said, to clean it out, where you get this real thick, solid, massive stuff you can't pull a boat through.
Yeah. Well, that's what I remember in the 90s in Sodas Bay. We stopped water skiing there because the seaweed was so thick it was clogging up the pickup tubes for our speedometers.
Yeah.
And as far as I knew, that was just natural seaweed. That was not an invasive species. So
it might not. It could have been invasive. I mean, it's hard to say. I wouldn't know, but yeah. So it depends what it is.
All right. Any more questions for Dave?
I have like a solution, I guess, to pose really quickly, not necessarily a question. And it's like a grandiose, huge, big dream vision, of course. You mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that the key to all this is prevention.
Yes.
That ideally you want the beginning of the graph to be how it is all the time.
Yep.
And hearing about zebra mussels and the starry stonewort, their origins and how they got here, it seems like with all of these ships coming on the St. Lawrence, bringing stuff to the Great Lakes region, that's how all of these invasive species are getting here. So would it be fair to say that prevention would be to find a way to stop the species from getting here to begin with? And that might look like, I don't know, a ferry system of sorts where international goods get stopped at the mouth of the St. Lawrence and then localized ships bring them through the Great Lakes region. So foreign ships aren't going through the entire waterway system, or use trains or airplanes or something just to prevent that access, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, sure. And you can't say all invasives are coming that way, but many are. There are, however, I have seen reports. Good news is they're starting to look at that in the Great Lakes area regions. They're looking at actually a treatment methods to treat ballast water. So when the stuff is pumped out, it's being treated or filtered or something, or they're flooding herbicides and algicides and stuff in the ballast water first, and then it's So they are looking at that, and from that, there are regulations that are starting to come in to control that stuff. But yes, absolutely. You know, if we could keep that from happening, boy, that'd be great. Because there's a lot. I can't remember what the number is, but it's 180 or something aquatic invasives across the Great Lakes now.
But you also have to understand that many of them are also carried by wildlife.
Yes.
You have
Yes.
bird species who pick them up and move them from lake to lake. You have the boaters who boat on more than one lake, where now we're starting to see more DEC involvement and having stations where people clean their boats. But
That's critical.
you're just scratching the surface. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an enormous task.
It is. It's daunting. You know, we do this. A lot of us do this every day, and it's like, wow. You know, we set up all this effort and working for 2.5 years on one invasive species. You know, it's a bad one, but it's one. There's a whole bunch more out there. You know, and you look at water chestnut. I don't know if you've ever seen water chestnut. If you ever looked at the little seed things it makes with these vicious spines on them, don't ever step on one. They last for years, viably, and they certainly get caught up in like a waterfowl's feathers. They fly them and drop into the lake, and there you go. You know, they evolved to do that. You know, that's what those things are for. So it is daunting, but when you keep at it, you know, you just got to fight the good fight and keep trying. So.
Well, if there's no other questions, David, outstanding presentation, very, very informative. If you want to reach out to me at some point in time, I'd be happy to share some of the things that I can connect you to.
Sure. No, thank you. I'll do that. Absolutely.
I'd be happy to do that. I know that the dive club that I support, which is one of the oldest in the state, has been around. They do a lot of stuff.
Okay.
They're involved with Owla and so on and so forth. So
fantastic.
I think they'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. That's great. I appreciate that. And great questions, everybody. You guys asked some real good ones. That's and I wish I had more positive answers for them, but we just don't know still, you know, on a lot of this stuff. We just keep plugging away. So
yeah, but if you gave us all the answers, then we'd know everything.
I wouldn't have a job anymore, right? All right. Okay. Thank you all.
Yep. So David, thank you very much. We're going to bring, I see that Tony's rejoined us. And we normally, David, if you want to hang in, we normally start our presentations with an international look at what Rotary does. And
okay.
Our international representative for the club, Tony Colella, is she scours the international magazine and shares 5 minutes worth of 5 questions that have come out regarding international aspects. So
sure, I'd love to sit in. It sounds interesting.
Yeah.